Hi, Jeremy Crow here, doing another video. I know it's not a week yet, but I just felt like doing a video, so here we go. This one, I'm going to talk to you about the higher self, and the implications that that term comes with, just naturally, just through the use of the English language. Now, what is the higher self to begin with? You know, there's about 1 million definitions out there. I don't think there's a standard meaning of what the higher self is. When someone says higher self, like, people will get an idea, but it might not be what the other person thinks that they're saying, you know. Some people say it is their idealized potential, what they potentially could be if they were, perfect or something, I don't know. Or if they were embodying their true potential, that's what their higher self is. Some people say it's a kind of a collection of your best, most virtuous qualities, and that collection becomes kind of that collection is your higher self, or the things that are worthy, people will even say. The higher self is all that which is worthy, and I guess the whatever isn't, what is that, the lower self? And that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about, is the implication that using the term higher self has is that there's automatically a lower self. You can't have something that's higher without a frame of reference of something lower. It just doesn't make any sense. You can't say, oh yeah, that ball over there is higher. Whoa, that ball over there is higher. Higher than what? It doesn't make any sense unless you have a reference point. Higher than it was before? Higher than that other ball? The word higher automatically, intrinsically, has the implication of a lower. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. You can only use that word if there's a reference point. So, what is the lower self? It's equally undefined. And therefore, what ends up happening is that people just use that to kind of, even if it's on a subconscious level, that implication, the subconscious understands that implication. And it will assign the parts of yourself that you don't like about yourself to that lower self. And then it's a way you can use to divide the self. So whether or not people are trying to do this, in the mind, just by using that term, higher self, you are creating the concept of lower self in your mind, even on a subconscious level. And what does the subconscious do if it doesn't have a proper definition of lower self, or even if it does, either way, you've got a higher self and a lower self. The lower self clearly has the implication of being lesser, or less worthy, or not as good, or not as worthy, worthy of rejection even. Some people will even explicitly say this. And so, again, using the term higher self creates a division. It creates a value judgment on some aspects of yourself are higher and some aspects of yourself are lower, So that's why I don't like it. I think that the parts of yourself that you've rejected, this is your shadow. That is the collection of those things, along with the various traumas that you've experienced, which is an event that you essentially don't have the mental and emotional faculties to process at the time that you're experiencing it. That's a trauma. These traumas, parts of yourself that you've rejected, that collected is the shadow. Now, the shadow isn't something to be discarded or rejected. It's already rejected. And it's growing. It's parts of yourself that are growing twisted in the dark, essentially, because you've rejected them or were unable to process them, and so you shoved them down until a point where you could process them. But the problem is, most people don't go back into those and relive them and experience catharsis and understanding through the mental and emotional faculties that you've developed since that happened. Because a lot of times, these things that are in you that are traumas, a lot of them are probably most of them, if you're an adult, middle-aged adult like I am, you would have the mental and emotional faculties by that point to process most, or a good chunk, depending on the life that you've lived and the things you've experienced. But a lot of these are from childhood, and as an adult you can process what you would have been able to process it as an adult, but as a child you couldn't, and so it becomes locked in that unconscious. People don't go back and relive them, mentally. They don't go back and explore them, contemplate it, or anything like that. What you really need to do is kind of go back into these various different traumas, gradually, be gentle with yourself. Don't do too many at once, but yeah, go back, relive it, try and understand it. There's even techniques you can use to go into it, to add yourself, almost like a time travel, where you go back into it as an adult and explain to your child self what's going on and try and help them process it, in a sense. And that's kind of a technique, a kind of a mental, emotional technique you can use to process that. Often it'll come with a catharsis that will initiate the healing process, and then over a period of time you will integrate it, and it will no longer be considered a trauma in your mind. It won't be part of the shadow. It will have been brought out into the light of consciousness and integrated healthily into your personality in a healthful way, in a holistic way. So the higher self creates automatically, by using that term, the lower self, and that lower self is what you need to save. That's actually, the higher self. We're already, oriented towards the parts of ourselves that we find the most, the best part, the parts of ourselves that we like the most, the parts of ourselves we already identify with. We already have that feeling of striving towards that. Now the real work is to reintegrate the parts of ourselves that we've pushed away and that we feel repulsed by. This is the part that we need to understand, we need to heal, and we need to integrate. So to me, what I like to do is to, sorry if there's some extra noise, sorry, just a little break here. It just started raining really hard here. I'm not sure if you can hear it on the speaker, but I'm sitting a little bit closer to it than normal anyways because it's darker. But anyways, so what I like to say, instead of the higher self as something to try and work toward achieving, I like to say the complete harmonized self. So this is what you're trying to achieve. This is the what traditionally people would call the higher self, and then the implied lower self combined in a harmonious, holistic manner. So they're all the parts are working together toward common goals. And this is another way that you can actually help integrate the shadow, is by recruiting it to achieve common goals. So recruiting more parts of yourself, even to achieve that. So sometimes people will do this with back in the medieval times, people were and even a lot of people do it today too, of course, but this was kind of like a big thing back ages past, where people would call up demons and get them to and recruit them to work for them. In a sense, that is starting the process of integration of the lower self, if you look at it from a certain perspective. So that's what I like to talk about, is the complete harmonized self as a goal to achieve that. Carl Gustav Jung would have called it probably, what is it? Not reintegration. Reintegration would be, what was it? Saint Martin de Pasquale, I think he talked about that. Anyways, I can't remember the term that Jung used. Maybe you can remember and tell me in the comments here. It's just eluding me at the moment. But yeah, so integrate all of the parts of the self in a harmonious fashion. Recruit all of the parts of the self to achieve your the common goals of all parts of yourself, toward the great work, essentially. And yeah, that's why I use the term complete harmonized self rather than higher self, and why I actually dislike the term higher self in general. I like to use words. I think words and magic, are very closely tied. Spell, what the word spell, think of the many meanings of the word spell, for example. So words are very important. Words are very powerful, and they will shape your mind even. Neuro-linguistic programming is an entire field devoted to how words and concepts and ideas communicated to another individual can reprogram the way that they think in a very dramatic fashion. So people can overcome fears and things like that. Change habits much faster than through traditional kind of rote, brute force, kind of do it over and over until it becomes a habit kind of thing. You can actually jumpstart that through these neuro-linguistic programming techniques. And so I do like to use my words very carefully, especially when I'm talking about occult concepts. And I despise the term higher self because of that concept that I just described to you. It creates a split in the self. It allows you to continue pushing down the parts of yourself that you don't like about yourself or that you've rejected. It helps keep you from exploring those traumas and healing and reintegrating them, just by the very term itself. Maybe you disagree, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. If you do disagree, please explain to me how you use the term, why you don't, why you think it's valuable to use a term that has an implication of a lower self, because that's undeniable. You can't have a higher self without something lower as a frame of reference. So yeah, let's start up a discussion on this if you'd like. Or maybe you just really like the term complete harmonized self or the way that I've described it. And I'd like to hear that too. That's encouraging when I, share things that you find valuable. Really, I hope this gets you to think about these things. Try and use your words very carefully, because they are like a spell, like a magic spell. If you use the correct word, then it's going to have a different effect. So, yeah, let's explore that idea. Talk to you later.